about ready to go. Yep, we're live now. So I'd like to welcome President-elect of the Missouri State AFL CIO, Jake Hummel, to the labor front. Jake, I appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to come in and meet with us. We'll be talking about the legislative session and the impact that it has on working families today. Too many times we hear our members, and I don't want to speak for the AFL CIO, but I think it covers them as well. We hear them say that there's no difference in the political parties. They're all two wings of the same bird. Too many of our members continue to vote for candidates that really don't have their best economical interest at heart. So we just wrapped up the legislative session, and Jake was at the front lines of the battle for us throughout. So Jake, would you like to give us an update about how this legislative session went and kind of an overall view of it?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Glenn. I appreciate you having me on. This has been it's been great working with you over the years, but this is great. I've been watching most of your updates on this, and I've really enjoyed it. It's a great way for people to interact. Yeah, we just came off of I don't know how else to describe it other than a crazy session. Every year, I think that something couldn't be weirder than the session before that, but I think this one probably takes the cake. We obviously missed a large chunk of session due to COVID-19, and we certainly were on defense most of the year that we normally are, but we stopped a lot of bad things from happening. We have a great team up there, great people that work with us every day in the legislature, even and on both sides of the aisles, that work hard to ensure that working families in Missouri have a fair shake and a seat at the table. So we've had there was a lot of things that were bad, but there was some stuff that was good, some stuff that's really going to affect the labor movement. First and foremost, we stopped an expansion of the charter schools in the state of Missouri. Senate Bill 528. Every year there's a different push and maybe a slightly different approach each year to try to expand charter schools. I know there's people that believe in them, but blaming a teacher for a child that doesn't have a home or doesn't have a meal or parents at home, I don't know how you learn in an environment like that, and blaming teachers for those situations is just is pretty reprehensible. We've got to look at other systematic issues of why we have children that fail to learn. 10%, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but 10% of the children in St. Louis public schools don't have a permanent address. Now, if you don't know where you're laying your head down at night, and you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, do you really care about doing your homework? Those are the things that we fight against all the time, and it's going to be an ongoing fight, but we'll be there. We'll be ready for it. A couple of paycheck bills that were filed, Senate Bill 701 and House Bill 2341. Both of those bills were stopped. No floor debate on the Senate on the paycheck bill, and none on the paycheck in the House. So that was good. Another attempt to circumvent having our voices heard in the political arena. There was, believe it or not, there was another attempt to cut our unemployment benefits. Senate Bill 690 was going to move from 23 weeks to 13 weeks. They're going to take 10 weeks off of unemployment. Can you imagine if that had passed in the dire situations that the economy is right now? I just saw an update that Missouri's unemployment tripled in the last month, sorry, from at least the St. Louis area. That's a massive increase. If you're going to try to pull that safety net out from under people, taking 10 weeks off of unemployment, we know that if you've been through any of these downturns in the economy, obviously this is an extremely drastic one in a short period of time, but nothing comes back in those quick instances like that. Sometimes these downturns are extraordinarily protracted, and we've got to make sure that there's a larger safety net for when our membership gets laid off. One of the bills that was stopped was an anti-grain belt express bill. I don't know if you're familiar with it was originally called the Clean Line Energy Transmission Project. Some wind generation projects out in Kansas, but there's a power line that's going to be built that's going to provide clean electricity through Missouri to many municipalities, lower their electric rate, 100% renewable. It's a $2 billion construction project to build this transmission project across the state. There was a move by the Speaker of the House to try to implement a block to this. They've been deemed a utility. We've been fighting against this for 2 or 3 years now. Huge jobs bill. There's always a kind of a tug of war sometimes between renewable energy and maintaining some of our membership that work in some of the fossil fuel industries. We have hundreds and hundreds of members that work in the powerhouses. This is one of those pieces of legislation that really is good for everyone, where we can provide good jobs, grow the economy, and without losing any other jobs, and providing clean energy source. So it was a really big thing that we were working on, and we're happy to do that. Overall, we tracked 171 pieces of legislation going through the legislature. There were over 2,000 bills filed. 19 of those bills were on the critical list, and all but one was defeated. And I can tell you that was the repeal of Clean Missouri. Putting that on the ballot. That was obviously the most detrimental thing to us. But Clean Missouri is us either poking our head above the clouds or being in the wilderness for another 10 years. We have got to have redistricting reform. We have to have these ethics reforms package that are in there, real reform, not a fake reform. And if you look at how Missouri votes, you look at the presidential ticket, you look at just D versus R, we're a lot more closer to 50-50 than the makeup of the Missouri legislature would lead you to believe. When you look at having a supermajority in both chambers, you would certainly think that the statewide vote totals would be a lot different, and they aren't. The reality is that Missouri is closer to a 50-50 state than anything near what the legislative makeup is. And it's because those people that are in charge, the Republican legislature, has made sure that they're going to draw maps that disproportionately affect minority communities and disproportionately affect Democratic representation. And we're going to fight this. I know there's a lawsuit going on right now, but it looks like the governor has moved this to the August ballot. We're going to have a lot of work to do in August to make sure that we defend that win. And stop this fake repeal of redistricting reform.
Jake, one of the things that's very frustrating from my perspective is the voters of Missouri have spoken out. I mean, when the Republican-led legislature and governors signed right to work into law, the labor unions, the coalitions of different organizations, including religious groups, all worked together, and we got out to vote and voted 62% statewide against right to work, and then they did the same thing with Clean Missouri. Now they're trying to repeal it and make it harder to get ballot initiatives passed and things like that. I think one of the most frustrating things on it from my perspective is the citizens of Missouri literally provided a citizen override of legislation that they did not like coming out of Jeff City. Then the Republicans turn right around and they present this legislation again. And when I met with one of them and talked to one of them, he told me that he did not think the voters actually knew what they were voting for when they voted on both of those issues. So what they're saying is that you're smart enough to vote for them, but not smart enough to vote, your own interest.
Glenn, it's the same adage that I hear from them in the legislature, where they're anti-government. We have to get rid of government and all this spending, but they're extraordinarily happy to be drawing a paycheck from the taxpayers. Right. It's hypocrisy at its best, and I think we all know that's not obviously the case. That there's different factors at play. The corporate donors that they're trying to appease, and they can say what they like, but you and I know better.
Right. The funny thing is when the citizens provided a citizen's veto of their bad legislation, now they went to the poll. Now they're going and passing legislation to make it harder to override their bad language in their legislation.
That's right.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
If you don't like losing, I guess their playbook now is to change the rules so that they can't lose.
Right.
I mean, at some point, you hope the voters of Missouri wake up and realize that the people that they're sending to Jefferson City to represent them, there's a large portion of them that are not being representative of the overall body of the state.
Right. Look, there's a lot of good politicians on both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely.
You've worked with them in the past. We've all worked with them. We're losing a stalwart, and this is a little bit of a surprise for you because it just popped into my mind. Labor is losing one of the strongest, loudest, staunchest supporters that we maybe have had in our history of labor in our capital, with Gina Walsh term limiting out.
It's true.
I know she's been an ally of yours, and I've known her for years as well. Gina, we're going to miss you, and it's going to be difficult, but we'll get by. And with your mentorship and leadership, and I know that you'll still stay engaged, we'll be okay. But I wanted to personally thank you here, and I know, Jake, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm pretty sure you feel about the same.
Yeah, she's Senator Walsh is my good friend. She has been for a long time. I'm trying not to get emotional and talk about it. So, but she knows how I feel, and I certainly am going to miss her more than I can say.
Right, and I told you I wasn't going to spring these surprises on you, but I didn't want that to go without bringing it up. Overall, if you were to grade the legislative session on the negative impact that it's going to have on working families, versus what it could have been, what would your grade be? How would you rate this?
I don't know. I'd say it's more like a 2 or a 3. Look, there's no secret about it. We got helped by not being in session for a long time. They took a big chunk out of session. There was a bad bill dealing with occupational diseases, asbestos exposure. That was stopped. That was going to limit the rights of our membership to seek compensation when they get a very poisonous and quite frankly almost always fatal disease that has been picked up, as you know, in every industry in America, and it's a death sentence, and our families need to be compensated fairly. So that did not pass, but there were a whole bunch of other tort reform bills that did pass that's going to severely limit people's ability to seek redress for some of their injuries when it happens to them. So we did stop some of the big ticket items, so that was great. But we were helped, obviously, by the little small session. We've got to start changing who we send to the legislature. I can tell you that when Right to Work happened, and we were all out there beating on the doors, talking to people, we won by a huge margin. We really didn't substantially change the makeup of the legislature. So that means that we did not somehow convey the message. We passed minimum wage increase. We stopped Right to Work in the last couple of years, redistricting reform, all of these really good ideas that working families fight for. And I don't think that we've fully connected the issues that we care about with the people that we're sending to Jefferson City. We've got to figure out how to do that. We got to figure out how to talk to our membership and make them understand that some of these social issues that we all know that they're are at the forefront of their mind. When it comes to putting a paycheck in your pocket, we have to be more cognizant of the fact that certain politicians don't want us to have that type of paycheck. They don't want us to have those kind of wages and benefits. They want all the power to be in the corporate interest side, and we can't allow that to happen.
Look, one of the points you're bringing up is that the negative impact that they can have on us economically, and something that I'm fond of saying, and most people have heard me say it before, is St. Louis used to be number 2 in auto manufacturing behind Detroit. 15 years ago, we had 4 assembly plants, 25,000 UAW members. General Motors used to be the number 1 private employer in our nation. And when you take it out of the economy and you all those good jobs out of the economy and you replace them with jobs like at Walmart or Amazon, you lose a lot of economic stimulus.
Right.
You lose a lot of people being able to go out and spend money. You also lose a lot of money on your tax income. And that has a very adverse effect on our state's finances. So we need to make sure we send people to Jeff City that recognize the value of good working class middle income jobs and what it does for our economy and our society as well. You know, we had at lunch today, and I appreciate lunch. It was nice to get to see you. One of the things
that was my first lunch that I've had out meeting someone in a long time, and so that was nice to have some kind of human interaction, even if it was a little bit from a distance across the table. But
well, I'm honored that I got to participate in it. So one of the things that we did talk about was the roots of organized labor. All of organized labor are very deep in social movements. One of the questions that came up on Facebook was a concern that there is a lack of labor interaction with the Black Lives movement, Black Lives Matter movement. I've started a task force at Local 2250 General Motors, and I've asked my Civil and Human Rights Committee to put this together, and it's to make sure that we are addressing some of the issues in our plant to begin with, but expanding this into the community. Racism, discrimination, sexual harassment, hostile work environment, those are prevalent anywhere you go in society. It doesn't matter whether you're working at the grocery store, you're working in a factory, or on a construction site. But I've asked them to expand beyond the four walls of our plant and start looking for ways that we can interact with other labor unions, the faith organizations, and the Black leaders in our communities that we all know and have worked with in the past. But I kind of feel like maybe we aren't doing enough to try to find ways to give them peace of mind that we're on their side. I know the AFL CIO started a very good program with the BUD program. Right. Could you talk about that for just a minute?
Sure. The BUD program specifically, and there's a lot of, let me start by saying that, a lot of people talk about the BUD program but don't really fully know what it is. The BUD program stemmed from the lack of minorities in the building trades in St. Louis. And I will say this, it wasn't for a lack of, there was a component to that, if you didn't know about how to get into the building trades, how do you even apply? You call one trade and there's a different process for getting in than the other. Some trades you have to get hired by a contractor first before you get in. Every group is different. So there's all these barriers, not to mention the previous barriers that were in place. Where I think no one would, if everybody would be sticking their heads in the sand to pretend, that there was not racial barriers to get into the building trades at some point. And we've taken some massive steps, leaps and bounds in the last few years to address that issue. I'm very proud of it. I did not start that, but others did, and they've done an amazing job. But one of the problems that we've had is that someone goes down and applies for trade A, but they're not really suited for trade A. They're really suited for trade B. I'll give you an example of, the sheet metal, the pipe fitters, the electricians were math intensive. If you don't have geometry and algebra, you're not even allowed to apply to be an electrician. I mean, we use those things every day. When your high school teacher said you're going to use algebra every day of your life, and everyone knew that wasn't the case, as you know, and you've been in the trade before, Glenn, that's not the case in this trade. So some people that maybe are more inclined to the mechanical side, but not great in those areas, maybe have applied and got into the trade, but didn't do well, quite frankly, and didn't make it very far. So the BUD program is a really, really great idea. So what it does is we try to find minorities, both male, female, African American, older adults, people that historically have had problems being underemployed. We run them through a program where they go to different trades for a period of time. A few days hit this trade, a few days at this trade, and they get evaluated at each different trade. And at the end of the program, and they provide you transportation to get there. There's a small stipend to get through that program each day that you show up. You got to show up on time. You got to be there. But at the end of the program, there's a counselor that sits down with the applicant and says, okay, what trade did you really like? Well, I liked A, B, and C. I didn't like D and E. I didn't like doing this trade or that trade. And they say, okay, well, of those groups that you really liked, here's where you scored in these. You didn't score so well at this trade, but you really applied yourself well. You got a really high score at this trade. You know, it's one of those things you like. And so they try to walk them through the process of applying for that specific trade where they excelled and exceeded. And we've had massive success, 90-something% success rate. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know it's almost everybody that has done it has made it into the trade and been successful and made it through the apprenticeship program. So, you know, things like these we could do in other industries, but it's been a great success so far. If we could expand the program, we would. You know, like I said, some trades it hasn't been an issue with people applying, but it's an issue with applying people to the right place to where they're the greatest fit.
That's excellent, man. It sounds like an excellent program. And if we don't have an educated society, nobody's going to want to move jobs here. They don't want to bring jobs to a location where somebody can't read a tape measure or understand how to read blueprints. So a strong foundation of education is excellent for our community.
And look, you need some of these remedial skills and groups to try to teach some of that remedial skills. Imagine if you showed up on a job, you didn't know how to read a tape measure. You know, and I know when I was applying, they asked me if I knew how to read a tape measure, which I did. But if you don't use a tape measure all the time and you haven't been in high school when you're taking those tests for a while, maybe you don't. And so building up some of these skills starting earlier is one of those goals of these programs to try to get people into these trades.
Right. That's a very good program. A little more specific to some of the things that have been going on in our nation. Look, it's difficult to talk about, but it needs to be addressed. We have got to find a way to go back to doing what made us strong in the beginning, and that's recognizing that we do need to be involved and engaged in these social movements. Mm-hmm. And I know you're committed as I am. Yes. The BUD program says a lot about how you're trying to uplift the community and make it better for everybody. And I commend the AFL CIO for implementing that and working as hard as they are to do it. We've got to find a way to help our community, to help these poorer parts of our cities. You know, when you start looking at the mortality rates in our cities, you can go from certain parts of St. Louis and the life expectancy is 65, 66 years old. I'm knocking on that door. And you can drive just a few miles to Clayton, Ladue, Frontenac, and the life expectancy is 86. It's a 20-year difference within less than 10 miles. And we've got to find ways to make sure that everybody has opportunity to provide better for their families. And I think it all comes back to getting people elected that recognize that, and don't bow to their corporate masters quite so much, and look for ways to help build the economy from within with strong education, strong manufacturing, just like we talked about today. That brings good construction jobs. I don't know how anybody can oppose that. And I don't know how we can continue to vote for people that don't see that and don't work towards those goals.
Yeah. Well, you know, let's just say this. Look, that we're living in an explosive world right now, and rightfully so. People are angry. The labor movement in this state and the country, we need to make sure that we're on the right side of this. An injury to one is an injury to all of us. And we have to work at all levels to make sure that in a society, we all have the same opportunities. And the fact of the matter is that, Glenn, I have a 15-year-old son. Got his permit in December. He's going to be driving here by himself. And you know what, Glenn? I don't have to worry about him not coming home at night and getting pulled over and something happened. You know,
right?
I don't know what it feels like. And unfortunately, our members do. And a lot of people in society do have to add that layer of worry. We need to make sure that doesn't happen. Labor movement should be leading the charge.
I agree 100%. We should be leading the charge. And I think last week or the week before, I had a roundtable discussion on racism, and I made a commitment to the group in the panel that we were going to have another one in June. I haven't scheduled it yet. I'd like to invite you into it, and I'd like to talk to you between now and then,
Sure.
and reach out to some of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists and the NAACP, A. Philip Randolph, some of these organizations, and see if we can't get something worked out with them, or we all get on the same page and move forward. Now, I'm not saying that we're not on that page. It's just sometimes we don't really feel like we've locked arms moving together.
Right.
And I'd like us to find ways to work on that. The faith groups, the Faith Labor Alliance, with Jobs with Justice. There's all these organizations that are doing amazing work, incredible work. And I don't know that we've actually engaged as much. I'll speak for me, from my perspective, as much as that we possibly can or should be. So my commitment is to try to work with them and find ways we can resolve some of these issues and help the rest of our brothers and sisters out there get through some of these dark times that we're going through.
To that end, Glenn, look at what happened with Right to Work. We all had, is an amazing time, right? We all have our own organizations that we're working on. Our membership has unique needs. The needs of your members in a car plant are different than that of the building trades or the service employee worker that's cleaning the building downtown.
Right.
We have different things that we're involved in. There's grievance procedures, there's contract negotiations, there's just the everyday issues that spring up throughout the course of our work. And a lot of times we put all the other things on a back burner. And during Right to Work, every single labor union had the exact same focus, and we obliterated that law. I mean, it was a sight to behold when we marched from the state capitol down to deliver those petitions. And ever since then, it really showed what the labor movement could do. We had a reawakened, re-energized movement. We all had our eyes on the same ball. And then, inevitably what happens is we get back to our smaller issues. Not that they don't matter, because they matter to our membership and we work for our membership. But we got to make sure that we can find the time to address all these other things. And if we can all put our eyes on the same prize and focus, look, there's nothing that we can't do.
I agree 100%, Jake. I really do. And I knew before I even asked what your thoughts would be and your commitment to trying to help resolve these issues. I guess I'm going to wrap it up here real quick. The legislative session, we've got to start getting people elected. It's going to go out there and represent us. Best way to do that is voter registration. Is the AFL CIO working on any kind of a program for statewide voter registration?
I can tell you that the staff at the AFL CIO, the state level, we do have a voter registration program. Lori Giannini, you could contact her, or Stephen Weber, or Mary Berry, any of us really. But we do have a program. We'll come out to your union hall. We'll help register people. You come help us. We'll come up help. We will come up with a plan to try to help to address those members. And then obviously we all know which members are registered and which ones aren't. And we're happy to go to each of your local unions and help coordinate a plan to get more people registered. Look,
right.
We talk about the parties. Personally, you know where I stand. I think there's a difference in who we send to Jefferson City. But the truth of the matter is we want union members to run for office too.
Right.
We have some running now, and no one knows our issues like we know our issues. People may vote for us and they support us, and we need to thank them. We need to make sure they get back into office. But the labor movement needs to come back alive, and we got to put our people in these positions of power, because making a difference starts at the local level. We just had school board elections, fire board elections, municipal elections, had some successes, got some union members elected last night to office. So that's a great thing. And we want to expand that and do it statewide. We need to have a farm team there, and change happens at the local level first. So we got a lot of work to do. It's going to be a busy summer. I know you'll be there with us.
Absolutely. Shoulder to shoulder. Last thing, and when we were talking about voter registration, it kind of dawned on me. We see all this civil unrest throughout the nation. We see tens of thousands of people in every state marching against the injustices that have been going on against the African Americans in our community. We need them to register to vote. We need them to go out and vote because they have the ability, the numbers, the sheer numbers of all the people that are showing up. If they go out and they vote and they speak as one and they start eliminating some of these politicians that are not supportive of their positions, they can start making change.
Right.
And I think that might be something that we can address with our groups when we start meeting. And I'm going to close out here. I'll get with you after the call or probably give you a call tomorrow. We'll get together in the next few days and talk. I know you said you had some off time coming up. We'll get together and talk in the very near future about forming an alliance where we can work with these different organizations and try to help the brothers and sisters in our community that are needing the help. So
that sounds
Jake,
great
is
to
there
me.
anything you want to say to close out?
No, but I appreciate you having me on, Glenn. It's been great to work with UAW, and you guys are a force in the Missouri labor movement, and we're happy to partner with you when we can.
Same here, brother. Good to talk to you. Jake Hummel, former state rep, former state senator, president-elect of the Missouri State AFL CIO. Thanks for coming on. Everybody out there, share this far and wide. Legislative session wrapped up. We were lucky to have the AFL CIO out there on the front lines supporting the issues that affect all of us and fighting against the issues that would hurt us. So, guys, thank you very much. Jake, take good care. It's always good to see you, brother.
Good to see you too, Glenn. Thanks a lot for
Take care,
having me.
man.
Bye-bye.
You bet.